So once again, I'm just going to touch on this subject of what are alleged to be, so aliens, extraterrestrials, or what they call and what have been classified very most accurately, as this is a very mysterious subject matter, non-Adamic humanoids. Because that's about the best way to put it, based on these reports that there's supposed to be these quote-unquote aliens that abduct people. And like, you know why we're making this report? Because this subject matter is not, it's not over with, and it's not out the window and gone, actually. It's still something that's relevant in terms of that it should be examined and the truth should be discovered pertaining to this subject matter. Because the reason is that I got to make this absolutely clear to all you viewers, guests, friends, family, visitors, dear visitors. Listen, see, I actually cannot verify whether or not aliens really exist, whether or not UFOs really exist, whether or not there is this alleged secret space program, okay? All this stuff, these conspiracy theories, so-called. Now, having obviously also, next to probably the more important things in life, though, on a daily, I have also been somewhat studying and investigating this subject matter since I was probably 8 or 9 years old, because of having picked up books as a child from the public library where I grew up that were books about aliens. And they were even in the children's section of books. Now, whether or not this is the best possible literature for children to read, that could be discussed, yet generally, though, it is a mystery. It's a mysterious thing, and it's something that basically it should be investigated because it presents us with a lot of questions. And it also presents a potential security risk to the entire human race. And this is not along the lines of some science fiction scenario or these movies where there's an alien invasion and oh my God. No, we have nothing to fear because God is with us and we are that what is God, created in His image and after His own likeness. As children of God, okay, we're the crowning of creation as humans. And not any goddamn aliens, not any goddamn ETs or whatever. They don't stand a chance against God Almighty in terms of that the human being who is divine is actually supposed to be responsibly all-powerful and is in fact thus on the highest level. So now, that having been said, the thing is, now obviously some of you may be thinking, Ross, what are you talking about? You know, that sounds crazy and so on. Listen, it is not crazy when there is evidence. Right, so there's so much evidence. There's more, like from a logical perspective of an equation, right? There's more evidence that indicates that there really are aliens and UFOs and all that crazy stuff than that there aren't. Because why are we even talking about it to begin with? Because there's all these different reports about this. There's all these different reports of UFO sightings and even these UAPs or whatever the heck that stands for. It's like UAP. It's the same thing as UFO, just different language, basically. That stuff is in the news. It's being talked about in the Congress of the US of A. So there is something going on. Now, I've studied this subject, you know, on and off for probably 25 years now. I've been looking at it, I've been paying attention to what goes on, and I actually think that, so I think that there's an objective truth we could know the truth about all this, and we could actually figure it out and know what's really going on with all this stuff. But it takes very detailed, diligent work on gathering like intel, putting it together, connecting the dots, and getting a big picture that is realistic. In terms of that, you're identifying a pattern made up of all this different stuff that's going on. Now, generally speaking though, there's enough evidence now on this subject matter that basically leads to a logical conclusion that it's more probable that this stuff is real than it actually isn't. That having been said, if you're looking at the news and you see them talking about UAPs, those UAPs, those are most probably man-made, like high-tech craft that have been made by men, like in secret, programs. Because that type of stuff, the human being, like I said, can accomplish probably anything within the boundaries of natural law. So the thing is, you've got, what do you call them? Look, you've got all these reports of UFOs, ETs, secret space program even. Very, very, very strange subject matter, although there is one problem though, folks. The problem is that if this stuff that they're claiming is happening, even with the secret space program, if the stuff that they're claiming is happening is actually true, then there's a major security risk, and it's like there's an attack on humanity, and there's it presents us with the necessity to take like divinely permissible, legal and legitimate, offensive and self-protective action as a collective human race against this whole entire alien interference and activity that is reported. But see, how can we verify if it's true or not? Because that's the problem. There's a lot of disinformation nowadays too that makes it problematic, because how are you going to identify who's telling the truth? Now, I have a way of knowing who is telling me the truth or who isn't. And it simply is based on utilizing wisdom and knowing at what times there's a potential towards falsehood, and knowing at what times there's a potential toward truth being expressed automatically. This has to do with how life is cyclical and how every day there are different life cycles. So if somebody walks up to me tomorrow and says, hey, I saw a UFO, I went for a ride, and so on and so forth, based on the time that report comes in, I can already pre-identify whether or not there is truth to this matter that's being presented to me. So that's one method of actually identifying the truth about this. Can you imagine that? Now, I'd rather not reiterate all these conspiracy theories, especially about the secret space program. Basically, to put it into a nutshell, there essentially is this so-called conspiracy theory. And the interesting thing about these conspiracy theories, as they're called, is that most of the time, they are actually a result of what appears to be somebody who is defected and is coming out with information that was secret, and also as a result of something like a whistleblower. So then you got to ask yourself, why does somebody go and risk their reputation, their potential career and so on, and like spill and spout off about some stuff that's going on that they're actually supposed to keep secret, because they have this moral compass within them that says, hey, the public deserves to know what's really going on, because it's such a like they're being fooled so much, allegedly. Well, by their fruits, you can recognize what type of tree they are, and you can judge a tree by its fruits, and you can also look at who benefits from pretty much anything in order to kind of identify what the motives of the humans behind these actions are. Now, look, to put it into a nutshell, and like I said, I'd rather not reiterate this because the subject matter itself is actually it's generally somewhat evil because of what is, reported in it. But basically, what they say, though, is it becomes the entire UFO subject matter really becomes, so to say, relevant around World War II. And there are these, crazy sounding stories that the goddamn Nazis, goddamn them all, had actually been cooperating with extraterrestrials that live under in secret areas of Antarctica. Wait a minute, I had a dream recently about that. It was telling me in a dream that there are places in Antarctica that are green land. And I saw this on a video too. I just remember a dream that I had a few days ago where I was told in a dream by somebody who's trustworthy. I think it was even somebody who really exists, or like a trustworthy person who is sent by God, so to say, telling me that in Antarctica there's flat land and ice, and that there's places in Antarctica where there's like green habitat, where it's not just all ice. That's what it was said, yeah. And there was evidence of this from expeditions. So they say that basically, as far out as it goes, is that they say there are other planets that have already been colonized by secret space programs, and there's humans from Earth that live on other planets that even speak English, wear the same clothes we wear, and all this stuff. But that it's like that there's extraterrestrials that are enslaving the human race, and that actually have a grip and a hold on and have subjugated the most powerful elements of the human race nowadays. Even the militaries are in subjugation and working for extraterrestrials, having been tricked into thinking that they're benevolent and trying to help humanity. So there's some depth to this. The conspiracy theory about the secret space program is you got to look at what they're saying, what they're claiming, and then analyze it from a distance and get the big picture. And the big picture, if I had to summarize this into a nutshell for you viewers, because you've heard of UFOs and all this stuff, if I had to summarize this into a nutshell, what basically appears to be happening is that extraterrestrials have in fact managed to trick and to bait humans, including the most temporarily powerful humans, like even the military, into working for them under the guise of there being this galactic federation, and that there's intelligent ETs that are going to that are saving humanity and the planet and all this stuff. And what actually appears to be going on, I can't verify this, but there are these reports, even from whistleblowers who claim to be, legit and in the military and whatever, where you got to look at this now, because this is a serious thing that's being potentially presented here. If this is true, then there's a major problem, because that would equate that the human race is essentially under attack and has been for a long time, and there's a major threat to humanity and its existence and it achieving its divine destiny because of alien interference. Now, like I said, I've never seen one, but I got to stay on topic though. So what I'm saying is that essentially the biggest picture of this whole conspiracy is that, and I've analyzed it and come to a realistic conclusion on the matter, and what appears to actually be going on, though I cannot verify it, like I say, but what appears to be going on between humans and extraterrestrials and all this UFO and all this secret space program subject matter they talk about, is that what's actually apparently going on is that humans have been tricked by extraterrestrials who have high technology into being subjugated by them. And this is the reason I say this is based on direct reports from whistleblowers who are said to be part of a secret space program in the military and stuff, who have testified on the internet, where they always kind of make it sound like, and these pseudo-New Agers make it sound like there's intelligent extraterrestrials that are trying to help humanity. And that's what some of them actually believe. Whereas what it really actually looks like is that some type of extraterrestrials have tricked humans into working for them and are like running errands for them. Like actually have been put into like slavery, heaven forbid. So, because what you keep hearing is that the military, the secret, like parts of the Space Force and all this stuff, that they work with this galactic federation said to be made up of ETs that are friendly. No, they're not friendly. It always is the same scenario and picture. You always have these reports of these like humans who are in the military or in secret programs or whatever, going on missions, working with like allegedly the Pleiadians and all this, but they're not actually. Do you realize that it looks more like humans have been subjugated by extraterrestrials and are actually being enslaved by them? That's what it actually looks like. Under the guise of that there's this galactic federation and benevolent ETs and all this, hellfire burn them all. They're not benevolent, okay? Anyone in their right mind, listen, there's actually people out there who are very knowledgeable who actually think that there are benevolent extraterrestrials. I'll tell you why I don't think so. Because the same reports keep coming. Think about this. These goddamn aliens are said to abduct people against their will. And like, even that, there's something wrong with that. So the question now is, probably one day we will probably know what's really going on about this whole thing. But generally though, it seems to be the case that there are not friendly ETs and that they're evil as hell and that they're actually in direct competition with the human race. Now, why do I say that? Now, what evidence, what data do we have about this? It's off the internet. There's channels on the internet where there's actual humans that claim to be members of or have gone on secret missions within what could be classified as a secret space program, like sort of like Starship Troopers and all that terrible stuff. I think, listen, I actually think that a lot of this stuff is in fact simply figments of the human imagination. And, humans, the whole problem is, if people are claiming that there's, extraterrestrials on Mars and tens of thousands of different types of them, and they're all fighting against each other and fighting to control the humans and take over Earth and all this stuff, it's like, what? Hold on a second, man. That's a serious claim you're making. And if you're claiming that, do you realize that is also something that presents a potential threat to like the human race in general? So then it's not only like people who just run a YouTube channel who talk a lot about this stuff. It's ex-members of the military and stuff coming out and talking about this. So now, subject matter itself is highly complex. And it seems as if the more you have a big picture overview of it all, the better you're informed. Because there is one person, his name is Dr. Stephen Greer, okay? He has a lot to say on this subject and has an interesting perspective. But now, if I were to give you a kind of it's almost like the perspective of somebody who has studied holy ancient texts that describe the history of humanity, the universe, and a lot of things that are not explainable by modern day pseudoscience. In other words, from a rabbinical, like a biblical scholar point of view, somebody who knows things that have been written down by humans and preserved for thousands of years very accurately, right? Like having a lot of very trustworthy extra information about everything in life in general as a biblical scholar, right? It looks more like, so it looks more as if there really actually is something that is going on, and that it is actually more of a threat to humans, and it's not something that should be looked at as like this pseudo New Age esoteric movement tries to make it sound like there's these good ETs and stuff. They're not. It can't be. Because, see, the evidence for this is simply the following. See, we are actually what are classifiable as, right, Adamic humans. We got a head, a body, 2 legs, 2 arms, right? Like, this type of a being that we are is actually directly the manifestation of God, or the God of the universe, the creator, in the flesh, actually. So we're the most superior being that exists. Now, at the same time, there's evidence that the creator had created other creatures similar to us, and that would technically, very probably, be exactly like these alleged ETs, or the dinosaur man, or whatever. God, they showed us that. I mean, they even showed us that in school, and it had some of the children were scared. I thought it was creepy too. I remember in 3rd grade, or even in like 2nd grade in America, we were watching a video about dinosaurs, and he showed us a video about these dinosaurs and then the dinosaur man, because they found skeletons of a creature that was kind of like a human, but it had like a lizard, like a snake-shaped head. I mean, there's obviously something going on, but what probably is going on is that, see, the creator has created so many different life forms. Some of them have been good. Some of them have been, they've evolved in a way that helps them exist in harmony with life and how it's supposed to be in the universe, whereas others haven't. And there are a lot of references to this in the Holy Scrolls with like the Nephilim and the giants and stuff. There's nothing new under the sun. In fact, all this so-called mysterious phenomenon that they talk about in the UFO ET category of, like, whether it's alleged conspiracy theories or whatever, doesn't actually surprise us, because we would have basic information about this coming from the Holy Scrolls to begin with.